Verse 11. Krishnasyo pranaya vasati preyasibhyo api radha kundam chasya muniviravitas tadrigyeva vyadhayi yat preshtairapyalam asulabham kim punar bhakti bhajam tat premedam sakradapi sarasnatura vishkaroti. Of the many objects of flavored delight, and of all the lovable damsels of Rajabhumi, Srimati Radharani is certainly the most treasured object of Krishna's love. So, the most favorite object of Krishna's love is Srimati Radharani. And in every respect, her divine Kunda is described by great sages as similarly dear to him. Undoubtedly, Radha Kund is very rarely attained even by the great devotees. Therefore, it is even more difficult for ordinary devotees to attain. If one simply bathes once within those holy waters, one's pure love of Krishna is fully aroused. So, before we explore the translation and the verse, we're just giving a quick bird's eye view of Srila Prabhupada's purport. Srila Prabhupada speaks about it's overall in everything. The purpose of speaking about Radha Kund is ultimately to inspire us to serve Radha Kund, to take shelter of Radha Kund. So, why Radha Kund is so exalted, Srila Prabhupada says, because it belongs to Srimati Radharani. And who's Srimati Radharani? She is the most beloved gopi of Krishna. And because it belongs to her, it's very dear to Krishna also. And the glories of Sri Radha Kund is so unlimited, and it is very rarely attained even by great devotees. And the previous acharyas like Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentioned about Radha Kund saying, this is the place, Radha Kund is the place for those. Why one selects that places, because it is the select place for those interested in advanced devotion service, especially in the wake of Sakis and Manjaris. If someone wants to actually go in the path of Sakis and Manjaris, then this is the most select place. So this comment actually throws a light that Radhakund is the highest of all the places, but it may not be the best place for a certain individual. It all depends on the consideration of rasa. If someone is in the Vatsalya Bhav, for them, there may be another place which is the most highest. That will be different. However, here Rupa Goswami is personally a Manjari. He is Rupa Manjari and he is in the mood of Madhurya Ras. So, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the highest thing that he came to give. Anarpita Charim Chirat Karunayat Avatirna Kalau Unnata Ujjvala Rasa. That's what he came to give. The Unnata Ujjvala Rasa. So that's why Srila Rupa Goswami, in line of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is trying to glorify that Unnata Ujjvala Rasa, Swabhakti Shriyam. How to do devotion service in that mood of Unnata Ujjvala Rasa. That is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's contribution. And as a follower, Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale. Sri Rupa Goswami is the one who understands the heart of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he is trying to glorify Radha Kund here. So in terms of rasa, Radha Kund is the highest place. But for a given individual, depending on their rasa, the most important place, suitable place for their sadhana could be different. However, if someone is wanting to go in the line of Sakis and Manjaris, then this is the most suitable place, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur states. Those under the protection of Lord Chaitanya, because there may be various other sampradayas also who have Madhurya rasa, but this is specifically for those who are under the Lord Chaitanya. Only they can actually understand, appreciate, and actually achieve the exalted place of Sri Radha. Those are eager to go back to God. Only, and if they are really eager, they have, and especially in the mood of Sakis and Manjaris, they have to go and perform devotion service on the banks of Sri Radha Kund. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says the Sri Radha Kund is so high that it cannot be achieved by ordinary devotees. It can only be achieved by the greatly fortunate devotees. And he says not even great devotees like Narada or Sanaka or Sanatana actually gets to go there. Because why? Because not just if a person, if a devotee who is coming to the platform of Bhava today is able to practice there and he can consider himself as better than Narada. Not in that way. He's saying Narada's mood is of Dasya. Sanaka and Sanatan's mood is in terms of Shanta. So they will not go to Radhakund because it is a place of Madhurya Ras. So that in that sense, even Narada, Sanaka, and Sanatana does not achieve Radhakund. And how to serve Sri Radhakund, because that is the main consideration. So by bathing, bathing is considered a service here as many times as possible, and most important devotional service, because we will see why bathing is considered so important. And if you see the purport, Srila Rupa Prabhupada writes that Srila Rupa Goswami says, live on the banks of Radhakund. But if you can't, at least visit there and take bath as many times as possible. And then the better option is residing. Serve under the servant maids of Srimati Radharani. Give up all material conceptions. That is the foundation. Rising above material conceptions and situating oneself above the platform of mundane material bodily identification. That is the first minimum qualification. And that's how a person is able to serve on the aprakrita level, transcendental level. What is the result of serving Sri Radhakund? The result of serving Sri Radhakund is one awakens one's pure love of Krishna in the wake of gopis by bathing even once in Sri Radhakund. If a person is actually ready and he bathes even once with that right attitude, then he can actually awaken the love of Krishna. And this person will return to the supreme planet, to the lotus feet of Srimati Radharani, and remain under the supervision of gopis as an assistant. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Naham vipro na chanarapatir napi vaishyo na shudro naham varni na cha grihapatir na vanasto yaturva kintu prodyan nikhila paramananda purnamritabder gopi bhartaho padakamalayor dasan dasa. So that's what this person will achieve. Will go under the supervision of the gopis, will be the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant of the gopis in service to Srimati Radharani, in giving pleasure to Krishna. So this is why Sri Radhakund is exalted. It belongs to Radharani, full stop. That's it. That itself says everything else. Because it belongs to Radharani, Krishna loves Radhakund as much as he loves Radharani. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says this is the best place for those who are actually wanting to achieve the mood of gopis and manjaris. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says it is no joke. It's a very, very highly exalted place. Not even Narada, Sanaka, and Sanatan get to achieve this place. And how to serve Radhakund? By residing there, by serving under the guidance of the seven maids of the Supreme Lord, by giving up material conceptions, and while residing there, and while residing also bathing there. The result of residing and bathing is one achieves pure love of Krishna, and after giving up this body, goes back to the service of Srimati Radharani under the guidance of the gopis. So now we are going to see Srila Prabhupada's purport in detail. The first question is why Sri Radhakund is so exalted. We already discussed that in short. It belongs to Srimati Radharani. That's the foremost reason. Why it is so exalted? It just belongs to Radharani. It is Radharani's property, personal kunda. So that is why it is most beloved of Krishna. And it's as desired, it is as dear to Krishna as Radharani herself. And it is very rarely attained, even by great personalities, fully engaged in devotional service, what to speak of Vaidhi Bhaktas. So even those who are fully engaged in devotional service, who have achieved the platform of prema, not all of them achieve Radhakund. What to speak of ordinary Vaidhi Bhaktas. A devotee will at once develop pure love of Krishna in the wake of the gopis if he once takes bath in Radhakund. So I could think of some questions from these points. If you had more, you can put it in the chat box. I'm going to discuss all these questions. After we see Prabhupada's purport, I'm going to take each one of these questions and answer with reference to Srila Prabhupada's, what he says in other places, and what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur or Bhaktivinoda Thakur says about these things. So we are going to see all these questions I will take up after we go through Srila Prabhupada's purport. So the questions that I have noted is, why is Radhakunda as dear to Krishna as Sri Radha herself? Because it's a kunda, here is a person. So how can some object can be as dear as a person? Like, what is that consideration? That we will see. And if it's so rare, what is my hope to attain it? Because it said, oh, what to speak of Vaidhi Bhaktas. So how will I ever attain it, if at all I'm even eager to attain it? What it means to bathe in Sri Radhakund, because here bathing about Radhakund is there, even once one bathes. So what it means to really bathe. And I have bathed, then why I don't experience any pure love of Krishna? This somebody can question also. So these are the questions I have noted down. We are going to see that towards the end of the presentation. So the other is the importance of bathing in Radha Kund, because that is considered the main limb of devotion service. The conclusion, Srila Prabhupada also writes that. The conclusion is that Rupa Goswami is saying everybody should reside on the banks of Radha Kund and execute devotion service and take bath in Radha Kund. So Srila Rupa Goswami recommends that even if one cannot live permanently, one at least should visit and take as many times as possible bath in Radha Kund. And it says this is a most important item in execution of devotion service, especially on that level of bhava and prema, when somebody is actually walking down that path of awakening their love in the mood of sakis and manjaris, then this is considered one of the most important item of devotion service. So the question that came up to me is like, okay, what it means to live on the banks of Sri Radhakund and what it means to bathe in Radhakund, the question that I asked in the previous slide also. So the next topic is the benefit of serving Radhakund. Srila Prabhupada writes, by serving Radhakund, one can attain an opportunity to become an assistant of Srimati Radharani under the eternal guidance of the gopis. This is the last line that Srila Prabhupada writes. So we need to understand what it means to actually serve Radhakund, because by serving Radhakund, one can attain the opportunity. That means we need to know what it means to serve Radhakund. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes, Radhakund is the most select place for those wishing to follow in the footsteps of the Sakis and Manjaris. Yes, we saw that. And those eager to return to Goloka Vrindavan by means of attaining their Siddha Deha should live at Radhakund, take shelter of maid servants of Sri Radha, and engage constantly in her service under their direction. This is the most exalted method for those engaged in devotion service under the protection of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's main rasa that he came to give is Madhurya rasa. So this is the exalted method for practicing that rasa, for achieving that rasa, residing on the banks of Radhakund, bathing there, and executing devotional service under the maid servants of Sri Radha. So the same, some of these repeated questions. What does it living at Radhakund mean? What does it mean to take shelter of the maid servant of Sri Radha and serve under their direction? And Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Thakur, as we saw, he says even Narada and Sanaka don't achieve this, get this opportunity. So what to speak of? It's such a high, rare privilege. And what to speak of normal devotees? So one should not take it very cheaply. So if by great fortune one attains the opportunity, if by great fortune one achieves, nobody is qualified. By great fortune, if someone gets, he should bathe regularly, giving up all material consumptions, taking shelter of Sri Radha and her assistant gopis. With such constant engagement during this lifetime will result in returning home to serve Sri Radha as contemplated during one's life on the banks of Radhakund. What we do on the banks of Radhakund while living there, that is what we will achieve. If someone engages in sense gratification, they are going to go. Then Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Thakur says it's no more Radhakund for that person, that becomes Narakakund for that person, because it will take him to hellish planets. So because Bhakti Siddhanta Thakur is speaking about all bathing and everything, I was just saying, did Bhakti Siddhanta Thakur bathe in Radhakund? Did he live on the banks of Radhakund? What did he speak about living on the banks of Radhakund? What did he say about bathing in Radhakund? So that also we will explore. So this is the conclusion of the verse that Srila Prabhupada's purport that he writes. The conclusion is that to live on the banks of Radhakund and to bathe there daily constitute the highest perfection of devotion service. He says it's a very difficult position to attain, even for great sages and devotees like Narad. Thus, there is no limit to the glory of Sri Radhakund. And he says, by serving Radhakund, one can get an opportunity to become an assistant of Srimati Radharani under the eternal guidance of the gopis. So living, bathing, serving, these seems to be the most three important aspects in terms of the conclusion that Srila Prabhupada is giving. So we are going to explore what it means to live, bathe, and serve in Radhakund. So before we get into those questions, there are some quotes about Srila Prabhupada's discussion on Radhakund. This is a room conversation that Srila Prabhupada had in 1976. He says, who will live in Radhakund? One is a very topmost devotee. And he says, there is no difference between Radhakund and Radharani. So there is no, how can you actually jump and like enjoy personally just by swimming for the sake, like, okay, I would like to swim, let's go to Radhakund and swim. No, not for enjoyment's sake. He says, you cannot touch your feet you cannot touch Radhakund with your feet. What to speak of swimming there for enjoyment? So you can take little water and keep it on the head respectfully. He says that is Achaman. That is respectful to Radhakund. So he says strictly, many things may be going on, but he says strictly speaking, Radhakund should be respected as Radharani herself. That is Radhakund consciousness, highest Radhakund consciousness. And he says, what is the qualification to actually go to Radhakund? Vacho Vegam Manasa Krodha. Only one is a Dhira, one who has controlled his senses. Only then he is qualified to live in the Radhakund. Otherwise, he says, what is the use of living in Radhakund, having 3 dozen Seva Dasi, means having sexual relationship with too many people? What is the use of living in Radhakund? It actually becomes Narakakund. And he says, once Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur wanted to print Govinda Leelamrit by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Bhakti Vinod Thakur told, you can print, but it's only for you. You are the only person who is qualified to read. It's not for general distribution, because Govinda Leelamrit is speaking about Krishna's pastimes and also glorifying Radhakund. So he's another place, Srila Prabhupada said, what it means to live in Radhakund. He says, Raghunath Das Goswami showed how to live in Radhakund. That is the example. Mahajano enagata supanta. Raghunath Das Goswami lived in Radhakund and he showed how to live. What did he do? Every day he chanted so much Harinam. He offered so many dandavats, obeisances to the deities, obeisances to the Vaishnavas. That's what he had, so much detachment. He is the epitome of detachment, Vairagya Murti. And he says he can take bath in Radhakund. So first of all, do this like Raghunath Das Goswami. Do chant, become renounced, offer obeisances like what Raghunath Das Goswami did. And then we will become qualified to take bath in Radhakund. The last, another conversation Prabhupada says, who can actually understand Radhakund or go there? There's only one who understands the Radha Krishna's loving affairs. And how one can understand? Only when they read the scriptures given by the Goswamis. Only when we get the mercy of the Goswamis. Because who are the Goswamis? They are the gopis and the manjaris. Only when we have the mercy of them, we will be able to understand what is Radha Krishna pastimes and how to serve Radha and Krishna. That's why Rupa Raghunatha Pade Haibe Akuti Kabe Hama Bhujavase Yugala Piriti. So what is the Pade? What is the Rupa Raghunatha Pade Haibe Akuti? Prabhupada says that is to eagerness to understand the literatures given by the Goswamis. So only then, and he is saying Narottam Das Thakur had this anchoring. When will I understand Radhakund? But normal people may think, oh, I understand everything. So that is not how it works. And the commentaries that we are going to see by Bhakti Vinod Thakur and by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, it's pretty much the same, only those points which actually differ or like some extra points that I'm going to give. Out of all devotees, Radharani is beloved of Krishna, and that's why Radhakund is also very beloved. So then he speaks even very rare. It's very exalted. What to speak of people who are practicing sadhana bhakti cannot easily achieve it. The essence of prema is rarely attained even by those who are dear to Krishna. The essence of prema is actually the Madhurya Rasa. In that also there are gradations. So it's very rare to achieve. So however, if one is in a non-duplicitous mood and fully submerges himself in this kunda, it gives him this prema. That rare commodity, Unnata Ujjvala Rasa, prema in the wake of Sakis and Manjaris trying to serve Srimati Radharani for the pleasure of Krishna, it is very rare. However, if one is in a non-duplicitous mood and takes bath in this kunda, he can achieve that prema. So that the thing is Nishkapata, the non-duplicitous mood. And this is also another commentary by Bhakti Vinod Thakur. Clearly he says this prema is difficult to attain even for Krishna's most dear devotees, like what he said in the previous. But if one takes bath in Radhakund with bhakti, then this kunda can actually offer. This prema is easily bestowed by this very kunda. Therefore, Sri Radhakund is the appropriate place to reside for all who are utterly devoted to engaging in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. If we are not utterly devoted, then it's not the place for us. And he says what it means to actually take shelter of Radhakund. Externally, having first taken continuous shelter of Nam and being sheltered at Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's feet, only such a person who is expert in bhajan can live in Radhakund actually. Because then he is actually, because of his mood, he is living on a transcendental platform. then he can see the transcendental Vraja, he can actually see the transcendental Radhakund, and he can serve under the guidance of the gopis and manjaris. Otherwise, it's not possible. So this is in a commentary by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He also says how Srimati Radharani is very dear, and the kunda is of hers is also very dear to Krishna. He says, prema, which is difficult to attain even for Narada, is never attained by others who are sadhakas. Is never attained in the sense it's not easily attained. However, anyone who bathes in the waters of Radhakund will attain the perfection of eternally serving the divine couple in Madhurya Rasa in transcendental consciousness. And that very same devotee will attain Sri Radha's lotus feet. That happens by bathing in Radhakund with the right consciousness. So he says, what it means being like actually bathing in Radhakund. Because he says, transcendentally residing at Radhakund in a loving mood and transcendently bathing in Radhakund, which is overflowing with the nectar of prema in a loving mood. That is what is being told in this verse to do. Transcendentally reside at Radhakund and transcendentally bathe in Radhakund in a loving mood. That is what Rupa Goswami is suggesting the sadhakas to do. This means being indifferent to mundane desires for gross material enjoyment and engaging internally in loving devotional service, Manasa Bhajan, again and again as a sold out attendant of Srimati Radharani. So it's a very much an internal thing also. To the extent it is external, it is also internal. And in this way, for the rest of the life, after this life, the jiva becomes like engaged in this transcendental service, then he eternally achieves that position. He says, what to speak of sense enjoyers? Bathing in Radhakund is difficult to attain even for devotees who have taken shelter of Dasya, Sakya, and Vatsalyaras. That's why he said Sanaka Sanatan and Narada Muni's example. What more shall I say about the transcendental bath in Sri Radhakund? One who takes such a bath even attains the furthest limit of great fortune by becoming a protected maidservant of Sri Varshabhanavi. It's very interesting. He quotes Varshabhanavi as the name because his initiated name before sannyas is Varshabhanavi Daita Das. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's name given by Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj is Varshabhanavi Daita Das. That's why he quotes Varshabhanavi here. So now we are going to see the mood of living and serving at Radhakund by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. It's taken from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's lives. It's an article by Bhakti Vikas Maharaj in his book on Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that is Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhav. So here I'm just giving a gist of it. It's a long article. It's a Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur highly revered Govardhan and Sri Radhakund, always had a profound devotion and respect and worship for those places. They considered them as the highest objects of worship and places of worship, Radhakund and Govardhan. If we have visited Sri Mayapur Dham, Sri Chaitanya Mat, he has Radhakund, Shyamakund and Govardhan replicas there. So that is why he actually had Radhakund and Govardhan at Chaitanya Mat. He wanted them to engage in that mood, like he's living on the banks of Radhakund and he's residing at the banks of on the foothills of Govardhan. And he says, desiring to eternally reside in Govardhan. He says, actually, I am not fit in live in Radhakund because Radhakund is the highest place. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur personally said this, that I am not actually fit in Radhakund because my gurus are staying there. They are serving Radha and Krishna. So I'm actually their servant. So I shall go there to serve my gurus, to assist my gurus in their service. And then I'll come back to Govardhan because Govardhan is one level considered next level to Radhakund. So I will not stay at Radhakund because I'm not fit. But I'll go there, serve my gurus, but I'll come back to Govardhan and live at Govardhan. That's why even when he lived in on the banks of Radhakund or in Govardhan or in especially when he lived on the banks of the Radhakund, his place is called as Swananda Sukhada Kunja. So he said his disciples to build another floor on the top. He said, I consider my gurus as living on the top floor and I am living here to assist them. I am not living here to live on the banks of the Radhakund. I am here just to assist my Guru Varga. So he said, add another extra floor on the top. So that is his meditation. I am here to serve my guru. He only sometimes stayed at Radhakund. He always did not stay there, and he rarely bathed there, even when he visited there. But generally, he would offer dandavats, circumambulate, and sprinkle upon his head a little water of Radhakund. And he ordered his disciples also to follow the same. He bathed sometime in 1922, but after that he did not bathe. In 1935, on the day of Bahulashtami, that is the appearance day of Radha Kund. So he performed a Sankirtan and Parikrama of Radha Kund with his disciples, and then he bathed. That is the last time that he bathed in Sri Radha Kund. And that is the time, only time he bathed after he became very well known and his mission was very well known. And he had a lot of opposition in Vrindavan also at that point of time. So this is the time that one time that he bathed in the to the knowledge of everyone, because there was some criticism from the Sahajiyas that these people are not real Vaishnavas because they don't bathe. But he didn't bother for many years. He really felt like bathing there, so that is why once he bathed. So when one of his disciples asked, "Oh, if Radhakund referred to in Sri Upadeshamrita was geographical or mental? What is it? Is it the geographical Radhakund it is mentioned in Upadeshamrita, or the Manasa thing, mental?" So Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, neither understanding was correct. He said Radhakund is a fully conscious reality, spiritual reality. So if I just close my eyes and then I think, oh, Radhakund, maybe it could be like this, it could be like that. That is not Radhakund. It is my mental speculation. Neither with my gross eyes, without purification, what I look in the Dham, that is just not that is not the only Radha manifestation of Radhakund. The manifestation, the aprakrita transcendental manifestation of Radhakund is eternally there. That is even today in Vrindavan, but I need the eyes to see. I need the adhikar, I need the qualification to access that. So I can't just close my eyes and imagine something as Radhakund and engage in some kind of artificial bhajan. Rather, I can just think all that exists is the external manifestation that is there for Radhakund today in Vrindavan. So that's why he said Radhakund is a fully conscious spiritual reality. And that can be accessed only when there is qualification. That will not be revealed unless we are qualified. So now that, although according to the Prakrita Sahajiyas, one cannot actually be accepted as Gaudiya Vaishnava without bathing in Radhakund, their ostensible dip in Radhakund is merely imitative. Just they think they are taking bath. That does not actually account as a bath, and they cannot be considered themselves as a Vaishnava just because they are bathing in externally in Radhakund. And commenting on Srila Rupa Goswami's recommendation in Sri Upadeshamrita to reside and bathe in Radhakund, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, this is aprakrita vas, means transcendental residence. It means to become wholly aloof from all desires for material sense enjoyment, and up to the end of life to constantly perform manas bhajan, deep meditational worship with one pointed submission to Srimati Radharani. This is the essence of what Sri Rupa Goswami is asking us to do in terms of residing and bathing in Radhakund. So he says, Jagannath Das Babaji is the sole custodian of Radhakund. All these Sahajiyas who think they are actually living at Radhakund and actually bathing in Radhakund, it's actually their imagination. He says their attempt to pollute the entirely transcendental Radhakund with their materialistic ideas, it's not possible, because Radhakund is far beyond anything of this material world. And the ill-fated Prakrita Sahajiyas cannot actually live at Radhakund, not touch even a drop of her sacred water. Even though they may be physically living in the physical manifestation of Radhakund and Vrindavan, according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he says they are ill-fated because they are engaging in sense gratification. They actually not living at Radhakund. They are not touching the sacred water of Radhakund. She does not manifest. Radhakund does not manifest to people with material consciousness. What they are thinking that they are having access to is actually is not the real thing. It's not that the external manifestation is not the real thing. What they are accessing is not the real thing. So why is Radhakund as dear to Krishna as Sri Radha herself? This was one of the questions. Why is Radhakund an object, Sri Radha as a person? Why they are considered as equally dear? Sri Raghunath Das Goswami says, the whole understanding is Radhakund is not just any object, it's not that any water, it's not just any lake. There's Raghunath Das Goswami says how this Radha Kund is actually filled with the glory of Radharani's love for Krishna. That is why Krishna is so much attractive. So Radharani's love, if you just take it as waters and then fill it in the lake, that is what that glory of that Radharani's love is what is Radhakund is filled with. And when Krishna sees, he can just but remember Krishna, Radharani's love. That is why it is considered as dear. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, seeing Radhakund, it's a long thing that he writes in Govinda Leela. Looking at Radhakund, Krishna remembers Radharani. It continuously fills Krishna's mind and heart with remembrance of Radha's wonderful form, attributes, and sweet dealings. So that is why Radhakund is very dear. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, because Radha and Krishna always want to meet with each other, but they were forced to remain separate. Longing to meet, but forced to remain separate, Radha and Krishna assumed the forms of Radhakund and Shyamakund. They are non-different from Radharani herself and Krishna himself, Shyamakund. So they appeared in those forms so that they can eternally remain together. So when Radha saw Krishna, she melted with ecstasy and thus assumed the liquid state of waters of Radhakund. And when Krishna saw Radharani, he melted with ecstasy and thus assumed the liquid state of the waters of Shyamakund. That is why it's not just a lake. It's actually non-different from Radharani. It's non-different from her love. And it completely reminds of Krishna. So that is why it's as dear as Srimati Radharani, because there is no difference between them. And now this concept of who can see Radhakund. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur tells that Radhakund is always invisible to mortal eyes. If I don't have a real Premanjana Churita, transcendental eye anointed with love, I can never see Radhakund. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he says that only those on the threshold of bhava, only when those who are on the threshold of bhava, that's why I said for Keli's question also, that who's actually qualified for which stage this falls under, this residence on the banks of Radhakund. It falls on the stage after crossing Asakti and coming in, actually arousing on the threshold of bhava. Even within Smarana Dasha, it is the stages of Anusmriti and Samadhi. Samadhi is the threshold of bhava, and bhava actually happens in Apana Dasha. And who have the appropriate bhava. It's not that everybody who achieves bhava will get appropriate bhava, the bhava of the gopis and manjaris. Only they can see Radhakunda as it is. Others see it as an ordinary place. Means others in the sense those who are below the stage of bhava. The physical conception is temporary and the vibrational conception is eternal. Because at one point of time, Radhakund was not physically manifested. It was Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who searched and found it. And Srila Raghunath Das Goswami actually excavated Sri Radhakund in its current form, Radhakund and Shyamkund, and actually made it like bigger and excavated it into a full-fledged pond. So it depends on the quality of our hearing and our attachment for hearing about Krishna and his world. So who can see really Radhakund? We should not just close our eyes and imagine something as Radhakund. We should listen to the scriptures that the Acharyas have given about the descriptions of Radhakund, and based on that we have to make our conception of Radhakund. Neither we should think the external manifestation that I see today in Vrindavan is all that is there to Radhakund, nor I should say, oh, this is a material manifestation, let me close my eyes and just imagine a beautiful form for Radhakund. That is neither right. We have to actually hear about Radhakund from the scriptures given by the Acharyas and have developed attachment to that conception given in those books by the Acharyas, not to our own mental conception, not just to the physical manifestation. One should be very respectful. You can see the behavior of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Srila Prabhupada is also saying they respect the physical manifestation as Radhakund, but they also understand a person with materialistic conception cannot actually respect to that extent, nor can he actually access and get the benefit equal as contacting or accessing the transcendental manifestation. And the last thing is best to hear about. How do we see? The best way to see is to hear about Vraja from our Acharyas rather than just see with ourselves, with our own eyes. So for the vibrational conception is eternal, and it will take us to the eternal, because the physical conception is the what we see, the physical conception is actually temporary. But what we need to actually see is we need to see the vibrational, through the vibrational conception, the eternal Vraja, by hearing from our acharyas. That attachment to the vibrational conception will take us to the eternal position. So the next topic was, what does it mean to bathe in Radhakund? Because we saw about living in Radhakund, bathing in Radhakund, and serving Radhakund. These are the three primary things given in this conclusion. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes, I have taken bath in Radhakund. I took a dip in Radhakund. I am a lump of flesh and blood. I am my wife's maintainer. I am a sannyasi. I am a Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Anyone who thinks like this, thinking in any of these ways, disqualifies one to bathe in Radhakund. What to speak of such materialistic conceptions? If we are filled with attitude of awe and reverence, we also cannot bathe in Radhakund. We have to tread the path of Sri Radha's maid servant without imitating them. It should be naturally aroused. One has to go to the stage of bhava. For that, one has to do Kintu adarad anudinam kalusaiva jushta swadvika. One has to actually engage in chanting the holy names, remove the avidya of ignorance, the jaundice of ignorance, and engage in continuous devotional service after asakti, achieve the threshold of bhava, reside in Braja under the guidance of the devotees who are under the inspiration of Ragatmika devotees. In that way, develop the qualification. And when the bhava is actually right, then it will naturally come. By regarding ordinary water as sacred and the gross material body as the self, one can neither see nor bathe in Radhakund. Because when I think I am bathing, and when I consider I as this body and see normal water as sacred, then I am neither seeing Radhakund nor can I bathe in Radhakund, because I am thinking this body is me. Sri Radhakund is always invisible to mortal eyes, nor can any mortal ever bathe in the same. This is from an article that he spoke. Like he can say, what to speak of seeing, what to speak of bathing? One can't even see. So what to speak of bathing? If one's consciousness is covered by upadis, that is, upadis are identities, false identities or temporary identities. When he bathes in Radhakund, he might as well bathe a bag of bones. Basically means no use. What does it mean to live on the banks of Radhakund? Bhakti Siddhanta Thakur again says, without the mercy of Sri Nityananda Prabhu, no one can become a Vrajavasi. Because living on the banks of Radhakund means being a Vrajavasi. He says, without the mercy of Sri Nityananda Prabhu, no one can become a Vrajavasi. So, who achieves the mercy of Sri Nityananda Prabhu? Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. And then he was sent. So, we have to actually endeavor for achieving the mercy of Gaura. Only then we can be qualified to be a Vrajavasi. And no material conceptions. We cannot have the materialistic bodily conceptions. And then we are also not qualified to live. Transcendental residence, not just physical residence and Radhakund. Because it was said in the previous verse also, if somebody is coming to the stage of bhava, they can either physically stay or mentally stay. But for sure, they have to mentally stay. They may or may not stay physically, but for sure, they have to stay mentally. So that is why the transcendental residence is not a mental speculation. It's a manasa bhajan. One may also be physically residing on the banks of Radhakund, but the essence is one's qualification to live there transcendentally. He says one may actually live there. That's not a problem. But the essence is one's qualification to live there transcendentally. That one has to develop. And while living there, one should only engage in service to Krishna, not sense gratification. These are the considerations to live. So when Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami speaks about living on the banks of Radhakund, he says, only those devotees who have developed, who like love for divine couple, prema, and who will soon become eligible to assist in their pastimes, that is those who are on the threshold of bhava, are able to see within their hearts the transcendental features of Sri Radhakund. Others cannot help but think that Radhakund is an ordinary material place. And he speaks in Govinda Lilamrit. What is Radhakund? The transcendental Radhakund. In the center, there is the Ananga Manjari Kunja, and there are 8 kunjas surrounding this Radhakund. And he gives an elaborate description about Radhakund's the attributes and appearance of Sri Radhakund. And what does it mean to take shelter of the maid servants of Sri Radha and serve under their direction? Because this was the other conclusion. Serve Radhakund under the direction of Sri Radha and her assistants. The mood of the Manjaris. One has to develop the mood of the Manjaris. It's not an artificial mood that we develop. It has to come naturally when we achieve the stage of Bhava. And when it actually comes, what does that person think? And the maidservant of the maidservant of Sri Radha. My life is for the happiness of Sri Radha. I'll always endeavor to increase her joy. Krishna is never happy without Sri Radha. I'll never covet being with Krishna myself, abandoning Sri Radha's feet. And the Manjari will always think Sakhis as her well-wishers, teachers, best friends. And by following them, that she like loyally, the Manjari will want to serve Radha and Krishna. And she thinks, I will forever remain in the group devoted to Sri Radhika. I'll not even go to other Manjaris, other gopis. I'm only dedicated to Sri Radha's group and never even look upon those persons who have abandoned our entourage. Because this is Rupa Goswami. His mood is the side of Vama gopis, that is the left wing under Sri Radharani's protection. So here is a lecture of Srila Prabhupada. What does it mean to take shelter of the maid servant of Sri Radha and serve under their direction? He says, gopis, they are not conditioned souls. They are liberated souls. So first of all, you have to come out from this conditioned life. Then the question of serving gopi will come. So don't be at the present moment very eager to serve gopi. Just try to get out of your conditional life. Then time will come when you will be able to serve gopi. In this conditional stage, we cannot serve anything. But Krishna gives us opportunities. So gopis means who are always constantly engaged in the service of Lord. That eternal relationship will be revealed. It will not be achieved. It will not be imagined. It will not be forced. It will be revealed. So we have to wait for that. Immediately we cannot imitate serving gopis. That's a good idea, but that you shall serve gopi, but it will take time, not immediately. So one has to qualify oneself. What is the process to qualify? Nectar of Instruction, verse 1 to verse 8 is the qualification. What does it mean to serve Radhakund? So if we want to know how to serve Radhakund, Srila Prabhupada, in one of the quotes that I showed in verse 10, he said, how to serve Radhakund. He said, Raghunath Das Goswami sets the example. So the foremost residents of Radhakund that we see are Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, Srila Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami, and Srila Prabhupada. We will see what is their mood, what is their mindset, what did they do how did they serve Radhakund. As I said, Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, he earlier lived in the association of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu under the care of Srila Swarupa Damodar Goswami. After Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left his body, he came to Vrindavan. He wanted to actually commit suicide by jumping off Govardhan. But Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami said, Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, why do you want to commit suicide? We have never been so fortunate to be in the presence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but you have personally witnessed the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Let us alleviate the separation from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but by hearing and speaking about his pastimes. Please explain to us. How will the world will ever know what did Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu do in Sri Jagannath Puri if you also go away without explaining to us? Please share. Let us alleviate the suffering of Sri Chaitanya, the separation from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the suffering of the conditioned souls by discussing about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he resided in the banks of, he decided to live on the banks of Radhakund, and he excavated this Radhakund. He made it into big. He signed leases. He bought the place. The original will, the original of legal will is signed by Raghunath Das Goswami. He bought that place from another person and he excavated, he filled with water, and then he served it. So his mood was, okay, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to excavate holy places and he showed, this is Radhakund, I excavated. He didn't think, oh, I am a sannyasi, he's not even a sannyasi, he's a Babaji. Why should is it easy to acquire place and is it easy to arrange for construction in those days with so much lack of technical advancement? Still, he did all that. And while living there, he lived always in separation from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, separation from other Goswamis when they left their bodies, separation from Radha and Krishna. He never thought, oh, I am living in Radhakund, Hari Hari, Radhe Radhe. No, he was always in separation. When will I achieve the service of Radharani? So that his mood of intense separation and his daily duties it was like stone. His daily duties were like, it said, like his vows are like written on stone, not written on water. Conditioned souls vows are written on water, as letters written on water. It continuously changes. But Raghunath Das Goswami's vows were like as if letters written on stone. It would not change. He would actually, most of the days, he would chant, offer obeisances, and serve Radha Kund in that way for 22 and a half, 22 and a half, 22 and half, 22 and a half hours in a day. He would hardly sleep for an hour and a half. Some days, not all days. Some days he would sleep an hour and a half, but most days he executed devotion service 24 hours in the mood of separation, and externally speaking, chanting the holy names, offering obeisances to the Vaishnavas, offering obeisances to the deities. He's the Prayojanacharya. He can consider himself as the highest Vaishnava, but still he was offering obeisances to thousands of Vaishnavas living in Vrindavan. And he offered the teachings to the mind, that we have Sri Manashiksha, saying, take shelter of Guru, take shelter of Gauranga, take shelter of Radha and Krishna. Give up all mundane attachments. In this way, he was teaching to all of us by instructing his own mind through that book. So this was the mood of Raghunath Das Goswami. So if we want to serve Radha Kund, this is the way we serve. By chanting, by serving the Vaishnavas, by living in the mood of separation. This is how we serve Radha Kund. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, what was his humility? In the late age of 90s, he was writing a magnum opus of the life of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And a scripture which is going to glorify the life of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for the rest of the time. And he considered himself lower than a worm in a stool. Like, it's just beyond the conception of a conditioned soul to understand how can anyone actually think like that and not have an inferiority complex and psychological issues. This is not self-deprecation. It is not actually lack of self-appreciation. This humility is considered as an anubhav. There are various ecstatic manifestations, bhava, they are called as anubhav. So this humility is also a daitya dana. This is also called as dainya anubhav. That is why they are manifesting. They are not like people with low self-esteem. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami considered himself lower than the worm in a stool. But how glorious he was revealed by Radharani herself. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur was trying to write a commentary on Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's work, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami wrote in Chaitanya Charitamrita that one of the Gayatri mantras, specifically, I will not take the name, it is said that it contains 24 and a half syllables. He writes that. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he analyzed the Gayatri mantra and saw that it has 25 syllables. But if Kaviraj Goswami is writing that it has 24 and a half syllables, it cannot be wrong. So he has to write his commentary also. He has to understand how it is 24 and a half syllables. By his own calculation, it is 25 syllables. So he was trying to figure out for a few days, but Krishna would not reveal, Radharani would not reveal. So he thought, okay, I cannot contradict Kaviraj Goswami and I cannot write without understanding. So better I give up my life. So he sat fasting until death. If the revelation does not come, he said, I'll just die. There is no need to live. I can contradict a previous acharya like Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. I can't actually write without understanding. So if I can't write this, why should I live? Let me just die. And Radharani one day came in his dream and said, see, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is a very, very dear servant of mine. What he wrote is right. The understanding is given in this grammar book. Go and refer this. If a particular word comes to the next word, it is considered as a half syllable. So because of that, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami wrote this as 24 and a half syllables. You refer this book, this particular verse, this rule is given there. Radharani revealed that, and she clearly revealed that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is a dear servant of mine. There is no mistakes in his writing. So in this way, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur was revealed the greatness of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami by Radharani herself. And Srila Prabhupada, he is an eternal resident of Radha Kund. He received this instruction of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur on the banks of Radha Kund. If you ever get money, print books And Prabhupada lived and served for that one instruction. Wherever he went, he always wrote books, he always printed books, he always made sure this knowledge of Krishna consciousness is distributed far and wide. So this is the mode of Srila Prabhupada's Vipralamba Seva, and his mood of intense separation that he lived from his spiritual master, his instructions. By following that, he lived in separation from Sri Radhakund. So in this way, this is the meaning of serving Radhakund. So the objective was to discuss the purport and also Prabhupada's mood towards bathing and residing at Radhakund.